Hey, race fans, Hall of Famer Darrell Waltrip here. You know it's time to drop the green flag on another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace O Matic. So, hey, pull those belts tight one more time. Here's my buddy Hermie Sadler and Senator Bill Stanley. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's see what they have to say, boys and girls.
Hello, everybody. This is State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
I'm Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left. This is Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace O Matic.
Can I stop already? Yeah, I know you hadn't introduced. I know, but this is the reason I want to do it. Hermie, you've turned right a lot. Hit the wall.
I was ready to hit something.
Exactly. And Sadler, you're leaning a lot at night, late, about 10:30.
Okay, I'm Stanley, by the way. That's Sadler.
Oh, you too.
I thought you knew him.
Yeah. Well, I do know him.
So look, what we did is, and we're sitting high atop the Stanley Law Group building at the Stanley Law Group studio in the Stanley Law Group Conference Center, and we put one of these large, beautiful posters of our logo up on the wall here at the conference room. And what you find is no matter how many times we do this podcast, if you look at when we start the show, both of us are looking up at that when we say, I'm leaning right, I'm Senator Bill Stanley. And so
our guest is already talking, and nobody even knows who our guest is yet.
Well, and that's typical for him because he always injects himself where probably he doesn't need to be, or he always ends up being a part of the story where you never really thought he'd be. And we've got a lot of that today.
That's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave this to you, Hermie. Why don't you introduce our guest in today's podcast?
Well, before I do that, I have to finish the thought of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator is powered by Pace O Matic. Because one thing that this person I thought would know by now is to have anything successful, you have to have sponsors.
Exactly.
You are right.
And you get sponsor mentions in as you have committed to do. And you don't talk over top of show host when they're trying to eloquently state the sponsor.
Right again, Hermie.
So y'all are now hosts. So y'all elevated this
he's
thing.
Talking without
host.
being talked to. I mean, do we even have to introduce him? Let's just see how long we can go and just never mention his name. See if people can figure out who this guy is. Because I swear nobody knew his name when I introduced him from the floor of the Senate, gave him an introduction. But they're like, how do you know so many important people? And I went, Chris? Really? Important? Like famous. I'm like, Chris, really?
Actually, this guy is pretty famous.
True.
And we have got some stories to share. Our guest today is Chris Williams. I've known Chris since the early 90s when I hit the scene in NASCAR, got my first opportunity in the Busch Grand National Series. I met Chris through none other than Dale Earnhardt.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
name dropper.
We got a lot to cover with Chris today. First of all, not at the top of the list, well, probably at the top of the list for us, the Smart Modified Tour season kicks off this weekend down in Florence, South Carolina.
It does.
The two SS Racing Modifieds will hit the track. But we want to go backwards too because that's what Chris is doing now. But I'll say this, and I say it nicely about Chris. He was one of the people that revolutionized the merchandise market in NASCAR. Really part of that boom, you might say, with Earnhardt, kind of opened the door to a lot of us too. You know, we got peripheral benefits from that. So we want to talk about the Smart Tour. We want to talk about Sadler Stanley Racing. We want to talk about what you're doing with the tour. You've also got a brand new sponsor as well of the tour. But we also want to talk about some Dale Earnhardt.
Absolutely.
Let's do this.
What's better? Old friends, new sponsors.
Now I'm going to give you a chance, since you trampled all over my sponsor introduction, I'm going to give you a chance to mention your sponsor that you have for the Smart Modified Tour for this year.
Well, let me say that I'm glad I'm here just because I've got a lot of history with Hermie and, you know, his brother Elliot. The Sadlers has been a mainstay not only in Virginia but in the racing world for some time, and they've done so much more besides win races. You know, they have great character. And you know, they've been on TV, but they're fun to be around. And I can tell you that it's a joy to represent these guys over the years. And Senator here, probably the one I've known the least out of everybody, but through a mutual friend, I got to kind of be a part of listening to counseling.
You talking about Loudmouth?
Is that my new nickname? That's my nickname.
I'm just assuming that's who the mutual friend is.
Anyway,
I call him Megaphone.
I understand.
Oh, you're talking about that guy, not me. I got you now.
So the mutual friend was going through a situation, and I actually got to witness the senator as a lawyer, but also as a friend, tackle something that he was passionate about. So I got to learn a little bit about what the senator done, not only you know, to the community, but also somebody that was going through something so dramatic. And I became kind of personal friends with the senator over that, just because he has a lot of tendencies that I have. He has a passion for the things that he believes in, just like Hermie and Elliot did. And so glad that our paths have crossed.
Mine too.
But much deeper than that, you know, you guys are visionists. You know, you have visions, and you have direction.
Mine are hallucinations, actually, not vision.
It's after 10:30.
Sometimes earlier on the weekend.
So anyway, but you know, we are here to announce that we have primary sponsor of our tour that's really going to help us elevate what we do and what we've become over the last year and a half. And the Smart Tour is a platform that really helps the modified world and the racers gravitate to something that everybody loves, 600 horsepower, ground pound in atmosphere and racing. But, you know, our new sponsor is the Smart Modified Tour, but it's powered by Pace O Matic. And I got to meet Mr. Pace and all the folks at Motor Mile last year, thanks to you two.
That was the Stanley Law Group stands for Small Business 99, was it not?
Absolutely.
And we were able to actually wedge Hermie into one of those cars. And
Here we go.
And run him around the track a little while. It was good.
It was good to see him come up to speed quickly.
Don't worry about me being wedged in the car, because at some point we will get into the 3.5 hour stay dry debacle at Motor Mile.
Yeah.
Whoa, I can't wait for that.
Well, that's not good.
That's really exciting. I mean, Pace O Matic has really stepped up and is really showing its support for our local communities, for our short tracks, for the Southern Modified Auto Racing Tour Series. They came down to the Motor Mile that one time, brought a lot of people in there, a lot of convenience store owners that serve as their clients, customers, and friends, really family. I mean, Pace, if you meet from Michael Pace all the way down, it's amazing to me in a corporate structure that you have so many people that not just get along, but swim, row in the same direction,
Yes.
and ultimately really are great people. And that's a really great thing. And they have a really good vision of seeing how they can help small businesses throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina with the tour sponsorship, but also making sure that, they're taking care of the history of stock car racing, and they're preserving it by their sponsorship alone.
Absolutely.
Let's first set the stage to tell the people exactly what the Smart Modified Tour is.
Yeah. So actually, and I'll kind of cut through a little bit of how we got here, but a couple of years ago, I was racing at Bowman Gray. I know it's hard to believe that I was holding the steering wheel, as I call it, but I was having fun.
You were telling me about that uniform you had that was like a African.
Hensley,
It was like a tent, like
yeah. It
similar
was
to the one that I had on it. Motor Mile.
It got a little tight though.
Yeah.
Over a couple of years, Jimmy Hensley let me borrow one, and
He was a skinny man.
yeah, I thought I was until recent.
Jimmy Hensley, great guy.
He is. He's the best.
Great driver.
And we'll get him on the podcast. Trust me. I talked to him about it.
Knows a little something about the petroleum business too.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
Absolutely
we
does.
shared that interest over the years.
So they asked me because they knew my background. They knew I was in licensing, and they knew my business background. And a couple of drivers come to me and basically asked, would I help them create a platform to race? And I said, what is it? And they said, it's Smart. And I said, what is Smart comprised of? And they said, basically it's the Southern Modified Auto Racing teams. And we went down to Puddin's People know who I'm talking about, Puddin' Swishers, and we kind of brought all the teams in and a lot of different drivers, Who's Your Tire, and a bunch of others to talk about what the opportunity would be, and to basically, they asked me to do it and to help them out, and I did. And I did because I had a passion for it. My dad was the general manager there to Martinsville Speedway, and I grew up in the days of Ray Hendrick and Sonny Hutchins and Satch Worley and Paul Rafford and, the guys that I called heroes. And to be honest with you, I love the modifieds as much as anything. And so I grew up right there watching them, and I felt like that I needed to give back because, they've been through so many different transitions, through NASCAR and taking it over and then kind of running a little bit up north. And the cool thing about me is I have that respect for the guys up north as well because, the Richie Evans and the Jerry Cooks and the Jamie Tomanos and the Hirschmans and everybody else. And so, I said, I think I can create a platform to give these folks a chance to, showcase what they do because it had struggled for a while. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, it didn't hurt that folks such as Bobby Labonte had an interest. We've got him in a race car, and he loved it. It didn't hurt that Hermie come out there last year and got the passion.
That was the big stepping stone for the smart.
That took it to another level.
We went to another level when Hermie showed up.
Yeah.
And I thought Elliott was coming, but Hermie showed up. But dang, it is what it is. But I'm just picking with you,
This
dude.
podcast was brought to you by Leaning Right and Turning Left, Sadler in the Center. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time.
Hermie knows I'm picking with him. But
You better do some more of that, by the way, or I'm going to be upset.
Oh,
I can't be the only
That's all
one.
we do.
Don't worry, I got plenty to give back.
Dude, after
Stay tuned.
After I listened to your other podcast early, I got a lot more questions.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, we're not answering them on air. Right now. Those are for later.
Yeah, but no, the podcasts are been really cool and fun. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think that you guys bring a lot more to the table, not just because of the insight of what you're doing, because that's what you do. You're sitting on, the Senate, and you're looking at bills, and you're helping out small businesses. And Hermie's a plethora of a lot of things. Not only racing, but he has a lot of background at businesses and helps a lot. And after that whole deal where he was running for the Senate, I don't understand all that, but
there's a lot there to it. You believe me. I hear it about all the time. Don't they care I'm a senator?
No. It's all about Hermie.
Yeah.
It's always all about Hermie.
Well,
So the Smart Modified Tour this year is how many races?
13.
13 races.
Yeah, and
First one is this weekend.
Florence. Yeah.
Now, how can people watch these races?
Well, Flow, we just signed a long-term agreement with Flow Racing. Mm-hmm. And so if you can't be there in person, which we would love for you to be, it's not in your region, we would love for you to go to Flow Racing. You can $150 get you, Lord have mercy, 300 racetracks now with what's going on in the NASCAR world with all the dirt series and everything that's going on. To be perfectly honest with you, you can watch a race every night, 4 or 5 different races every night, and not see them all. And so they're going to cover all of our events. Our voice, Eric Brennan's going to be our voice. He's the ones that watched us last year. We made sure that we kept it thanks to Terry Labonte after the first race that we did last year. Terry says, you got to get somebody in there that I can understand. And so Eric's been our voice, and he'll be covering all of our races. So Flow Racing is a cool attribute to what the Smart's growth is and going to be.
Well, I had the pleasure. It was so much fun last year at Motor Mile to go up. And I had fun racing too, but being back in the short track environment that had been a while since I had been to, the fan interaction that y'all do is great. Catching back up with Bobby Labonte again was great. And from that, I think that night had a lot to do with the fact that as we sit here today, we have Sadler Stanley Racing, which is another vehicle, just like this podcast is, for us to continue to keep our message out front about what we're doing, what we're trying to do for small business, and what we're trying to do, keeping up with Bill in the political arena, talking about law. We've had some wonderful guests that have covered all these different things. But, from October to now, you think about how much has changed and what's going on because of us coming to that race at Motor Mile. And so what?
Hermie's looking for you to thank us. That's
No.
Actually,
What?
It's your welcome.
your visions, both of your visions.
I mean, you can thank us if you want to.
Well, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
And you know, both of your visions and what you were trying to get accomplished and helping a lot of different individuals other than just small businesses as well, basically gravitated everything to where we're at today. You know, there's a voice platform, there's a brand platform, there's a small business platform, there's a lot of different other things that's going on right now.
Community platform.
A community platform. And it's just, you know, it's all being recognized. And, you know, every chance you get to speak the truth and to help that cause out is applauded. And you guys are doing good at it.
What having a sponsor like Pace O Matic? So you're, I mean, modified racing obviously has been around forever and ever, but your involvement really in this tour is young.
Oh, absolutely.
So what can a sponsor and a partner like Pace O Matic help you do? So what can the competitors expect? What can the
everything? And look, as a competitor, you know, and I laugh because it's all true, but you know, last year we had 2,000 to win, and you know, Baba Labonte made reference to, even in his Facebook page, you know, I won $2,000, and it became a joke because, you know, you can't. The drivers out there are not racing to make money. They're not doing it. They're doing it because they're passionate for what they do and what they love. And Hermie, I can tell you right now, I know that's what you're doing it for. You know, in most cases, you're not going to win. Probably now with our purse going up to $3,500, and we're going to have a couple of races. It's going to be $6,000, and we have one $10,000 to win race. And so, you know, you're racing for an opportunity to make a little money, right? But number two is it's all about the car count and everything that goes on. Anybody that's ever run a track, anybody that ever understands what goes on, it's about that car from 11th to 30th, right? And so we're trying to put that money in the middle. We're trying to give them an opportunity to break even so they don't have to go home and tell their wives that, you know, I spent, you know, $2,000 to win 500, right? We're trying to eat into that a little bit and give a platform. And Pace O Matic, what they do, it changes.
You mean people tell their wives how much money they spend racing?
Well, they don't, but there's somebody out there.
Damn, glad I never thought about that.
that finds out what's going on. But, you know, Pace O Matic, not only from the points fund, but not only from the purse, but now there's other things inside the race that helps that. We give away tires with our sponsors. We give away. We don't give away. We give a halfway leader award. You know, we have the stage. We have the hard luck, and so all of this adds up. And let's be honest, without the sponsorship, without them committed, because they have to be committed, because they're partners of yours now, right? They have to be committed in the message and what's going on. And the cool thing about Pace O Matic is they sit down and is like, what do you need? Like, how can we help that driver? How can we help that small team? Because they understand small businesses and they understand what it takes to get to the track. Because you know as well as I do, Hermie, there's 70 hours of preparation going on before you ever get there on Sunday, Saturday. You know,
one thing that's been cool and fun on my dealings with Pace O Matic as it relates to the race team, they're new to the racing arena. Okay, so but in a way that's been refreshing because all of their questions and initiatives and things they want to do are more related to the local community.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How to bring in or involve local small businesses, retailers, how to make it a community event,
mm-hmm.
how to make it interactive for the fans that are there live at the racetrack. I mean, I've been around some of those meetings and conversations that you've had with them. So in a way, that's, you know, you're going to put the focus on the racer.
Yep.
I'm going to put the focus on my race team. But Pace O Matic's like, how can we draw in the whole community?
Yep.
How can we make the experience better for the fans that are coming out to watch, all those things? So in a way, it's been really refreshing to have a sponsor come in and really have never done this before, because we've all been around situations where people come in, oh, I've done this before. This is what we've always done.
Yeah.
This is what, you know, it's really, I think, sets it up nicely, Bill, that I know hits back something that you're passionate about, and that is that grassroots community involvement in racing that we're trying to go back and reestablish.
And that's we've said it before on this podcast. We'll say it again because at the peak, and you were part of that peak, and I would say that was probably around 2001. You'd have to wait a couple of years to buy tickets to Martinsville. It was always sold out beforehand. We saw that ebb away, and it's kind of gotten away from itself. I think from the glory days of NASCAR, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And really, though, we got to get back to where we started, where the sport started. And it really started in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina with the moonshiners who wanted to race each other with their cars that they'd souped up themselves. And a sport was born, but a lifestyle, a way of life was born, a family kind of environment, community kind of environment. All of those things came together to make NASCAR what it was. And I've seen that kind of go away. I still watch it religiously, but it's not your father's NASCAR. It's not the one, I remember when they used to do the Daytona 500, they'd show you the second half of it. Do you guys remember that?
Wild World of Sports. Or
yeah, Wild World of Sports.
That's exactly right.
Be halfway through. And but we would be waiting for it. It's getting back to what the beginnings of this sport are, because you know what I've learned is, and we've learned in a podcast, but the number 2 watch sport in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the number 2 money-making sport and spectator sport in the Commonwealth of Virginia behind college football is stock car racing, and not necessarily NASCAR. And so you're really energizing the communities, not only with bringing attention to those historic tracks, but also Pace and your tour are not highlighting just that history, but also those small businesses are going to benefit from having a great race weekend with your Smart Tour coming in there with Bobby Labonte, with Hermie Sadler and Elliott Sadler, who says he'll wave a flag, but he's not driving the car. We're going to have a second car, as we've said before, that's going to have a NASCAR Legends in there. That's going to help put more butts in the seat. And Pace just sits there, and they want to make sure that even the small businesses benefit, especially the ones that they're loyal to, their operators, the small convenience stores. I mean, that's the community that started racing. I think if we get back to that, then we can reinvigorate racing, because the best racing, as we say in politics, the best government is at the local level. The best racing, I believe, is at the local level, and we need to get back to that.
That was one thing that was so fun for me at Motor Mile. Chris did too, and I got a rare opportunity that I wish I had taken more advantage of at the time, but a rare opportunity to race in the Truck Series, in the Busch Grand National Series, in the Cup Series, do TV, nationwide TV, been around all of that. And after a while, we talked a couple episodes ago about when Elliott and I decided to step away and why and what was important and all that. But sometimes when you get up there, it's not as fun as it used to be when you have all these responsibilities and things of that nature. But when I got to Motor Mile, from the other competitors to the crew, men and women that working on the cars, they were all there because they love racing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know that I saw anybody there that was there because they make a living in racing. Now, some people, build cars and vendors, but by and large, the drivers and the people working on the cars, weekend warrior type guys, that really was refreshing to me.
And let's be honest. I mean, as we were growing up, you was introduced to racing by somebody, right? It's somebody that made an impression on you. Could have been your brother, could have been somebody else, could have been an uncle, in your case, or whatever. And, people ask me a lot of time is, why did most people do it back then? Because it never was for the money. It was either because you was introduced into it, or you was working for somebody that you didn't want to let down, or you was trying to learn to progress further into what racing was all about. And so you wasn't getting paid. I mean, heck, half the crews never get paid now. Right. They just don't get paid. And, the reason, even Earnhardt, we talked about this many times, me and Dale. I told him, a long time ago, he says, why do you do it? I said, I want a chance to work with you. And I built a relationship. I mean, Earnhardt told me I was one of his top 5 friends, period. And when he can tell you that after years of working with you, it means the things that he instilled with you is honesty, integrity, trust, and loyalty, right? And that's important to me. But it's important, to those individuals that are helping the Sadlers or helping the Bobby Labonis or whatever. It's the relationship, right? It's the journey, right? And that's what racing is really all about. Learning as you go and respect the person you're doing and not giving up. Sometimes it may be, 15, 16 hours in the garage, but you're doing it because of the passion you have for the sport.
Well, and we can see that with our driver, the 22 driver, Jonathan Brown, John Boy, who's got quite a reputation. I mean, he was in a reality series, Madhouse, but he's got these 3 guys that we met when we went down to Phil's shop. And I was interested as could all be about these guys. And I'm like, okay, so I thought they were part of Phil's staff. I thought no, they love racing so much and they love helping out John Boy that they change tires, they help with the car, and they spot for basically, I'm sure John Boy gives them a little bit of the purse, but it's for the love of the sport.
Absolutely.
And to be a part of a winning team. And now, we're building a 2-car team that's going to be competitive the first year out. We've got a competitive driver. We've got a hook, which is also Hermie Sadler in the seat at South Boston, or Ryan Newman, if we can get him. Anybody, a Wallace out there. People are going to come because they want to see Bobby Labonte racing Kenny Wallace or Hermie.
Another element
and John Boy as he runs for a championship.
Another element we're going to bring too, that I've talked with Elliot a little bit about, and we want to also provide some opportunities. I know we want to get legends in the cars and all that, but like Elliot, we talked on our previous podcast, is big into iRacing.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've talked about, let's take somebody that accomplishes something big in iRacing
100%
and give them an opportunity.
Yeah, because they're not going to get it anywhere
They're
else.
not going to get anywhere else.
I agree with
And
100%.
I've also, on top of everything else, I'm in the go-kart business. I really got, Elliot and I both, I really love for racing was cemented in the karting world. And I'm still involved in karting to this day. So I've mentioned a couple of my guys that are in my karting community. I'd like to give them a shot somewhere along the line to drive one of these cars.
Yeah.
Because, I was able and my brother was able to have an opportunity to get that shot.
Yeah.
That is hard to get these days.
Yeah, you just don't get them.
You just don't get them. So if and look, if I can take a guy that's in my karting family, and if he earns an opportunity, I can put him on the track with Bobby Labonte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we can take somebody that's an iRacing guru for Elliot,
Yeah.
and let's say he wins or does well in the Coca-Cola series,
Yeah.
and Elliot can say, hey, if you accomplish A, B, C, D, and E, we're going to put you on a smart modified tour
Absolutely.
and race against Bobby Labonte and Burt Myers and Jonathan Brand.
Yeah.
I mean, so we really have got some opportunities that I think, is just as much as I am looking forward to a Kenny Wallace or a Joe Nemechek or a Todd Bodine, these people that I have spoken to about racing for us. Just as excited as I am about that, I'm excited about seeing the big eyes
Yeah.
of a teenage, early 20s
Yeah.
driver that, wow,
Yeah.
that's really, I mean,
They don't get that chance.
they don't get that chance. We can put them in a live, living, breathing race car on the track with, and look, I mentioned Bobby Labonte because obviously the name recognition, but there's the whole field. I raced against them at Motor Mile.
They're great.
They're great.
It ain't, in our series, I mean, everybody knows we had first 7 races. We had 7 different pole winners and 7 different winners.
Yeah. And between,
That says a lot.
Yeah,
It really
huge.
between what Pace O Matic is doing and what we're actually going to, there's going to be more notoriety. There's going to be more attention brought to this series,
Absolutely.
this year and the following year. So, we have a lot of different hooks in the water to really put our money where our mouth is and provide real life opportunity. Because we stick an iRacing guy in there,
Look.
he gets a top 5. That's a stepping stone.
People are going to look at it.
Let's be honest. We have been around this sport for a long time.
Yeah.
If we can't think of the ideas and the things that can promote that young driver, I mean, look at Caleb Hetty. Caleb Hetty runs in the Legend Series. He comes out, runs for Tommy Baldwin, wins 2 races for us. I mean, I remember the very first race he come and practice and he wrecked at Caraway, but he was strong after that. He is a talent. He got a shot, right?
Yeah.
And if I mean, in Pace O Matic. I mean, let's also talk about this. I mean, you was there with the Ride Along program.
Yep.
You know, where else can you come? And we're going to provide this year through Pace O Matic is the Ride Along program with Pace O Matic. And, you know, Bobby Labonte did, you did last year, and gave kids and sponsors and different people an opportunity to get in.
That's a good way to tell a sponsor to back off when they're complaining about performance.
Yeah, 100%.
Hop in this car and ride. They shut up. You don't hear a damn thing from them the rest of the year.
Except,
Yeah. Hey, I want to take a moment to remind our listeners that Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator is sponsored by Pace O Matic. Pace O Matic is an entertainment company that develops gaming software that players love to play and can use their skills to win every time. Plus, these games of skill provide vital revenue to keep family-owned businesses like bars, restaurants, convenience stores, and truck stops thriving, especially in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
especially right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, due to you stepping up, being courageous, and fighting an unconstitutional law. So I give you credit for that.
NMLS number 65084, Equal Housing Lender. New Year's resolutions are just hard to keep up with, but saving money is easy at SaveWithConrad.com. Wouldn't 2022 be easier with lower monthly payments? Get the best rate you've ever had, pay off your credit card debt, and even get the cash you need right now at SaveWithConrad.com. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to get started, and you can even skip your next 2 house payments at SaveWithConrad.com. Find out how much money you can save for free at SaveWithConrad.com.
Hi, folks. This is Hermie Sadler. Thanks for listening to our all-new podcast, Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. I hope you are enjoying the show as much as Senator Stanley and I enjoy bringing it to you. Whether you're a family traveling together or a truck driver hauling freight up and down the highway, I hope you will take the time to visit one of our Sadler Travel Plaza locations in Virginia and North Carolina. Sadler Travel Plaza locations are licensed dealer locations for Pilot Travel Centers. And we also carry Shell Motiva petroleum products for our four-wheel friends. We pride ourselves on providing one-stop shopping for service, food, and entertainment. Our food options include Five Guys Burgers and Fries, Quiznos, Dairy Queen, Hermie Sadler's Faux Show Bar and Grill, Victory Lane Restaurant, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and much, much more. Our locations include Sadler Travel Plaza in South Hill, located off I-85 at Exit 12. The Sadler Travel Plaza of Emporia, which is conveniently located on Exit 11B off I-95, and Sadler Travel Plaza on Highway 58 in Suffolk. We also have our North Carolina location, Sadler Travel Plaza in Dunn, North Carolina. That's Exit 75 off I-95. We appreciate all of our customers. And Bill and I appreciate you listening to Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace O Matic. So you brought up Dale Earnhardt.
Yes.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yes.
How did you first meet and what started your relationship with Dale Earnhardt?
Well, you know, I've told people I'm going to write a book, and, you know, a lot of people know that I was with and around Dale quite a bit. But you ask, and I'm going to tell you, because I don't think too many people's heard this story. So I had played for Jerry Mason in a basketball, 3 state championships, and my appendix had ruptured on a Friday night game. And so back then, back in the day, you know, you had to miss 3 full days before the doctor released you to go back to school. And I had never missed a day of school, ever. And I was in 11th grade. And Dale was down at the Speedway testing. And my dad, of course, was the general manager. He sees me at home because, you know, we live right on the Speedway Road. And he's like, why ain't you at school? And I said, they sent me home. They said I had to have 3 full days out, you know, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. The doctor wouldn't release, and, you know, Dr. DeVault wouldn't let me in. And so he's like, well, just come on down here. It says a hot shoe kid down here named Dale Earnhardt. I was like, yeah, I know. I seen him. You know, he ran this, ran that. It was good. And so we went down there, and I got this all on video. My mom had one of them beta cameras, you know, the big beta cameras. So I went down there, and I was at flag stand, and I was on pit road, and I went down to turn 1, and I was literally 3 foot off the grass. If you remember, back then the track was not as wide. You know, they took that last groove out in the late 90s. You know, made it a little bit wider, but I was kind of on the grass and getting a shot of him coming by, and I was 3 foot off the curb. And so he comes in and he's like, boy, why ain't you in school? I said, stupidest thing ever. So I went through the whole deal of,
This is Dale ask you this?
yes,
Okay.
it's Earnhardt. And I said, they wouldn't let me go back to school. And he, in Earnhardt's way, that's stupid, and so we were sitting there talking. He said, why was you so close to the curb? And I said, hey, man, you the champ. I said, I knew you could handle it. Well, he got that shit-eating grin on his face. And he's like, I like this kid, So I just hung around. And one of the most unique and craziest things happened. He didn't like his belts. He didn't like his seat belts. And so he went in. I got it on film. It's crazy. He cuts his seat belts and he duct tapes them. And he sees me looking at him. And he said, boy, if you ever race, you don't do this shit right here. He said, this will get you killed. Ironically, you know what I'm saying? It's just a moment in time that you just, it sticks out to you now. But that was just the things that he did. And to be honest with you, that's the first time I ever met him. Hank Jones, I got to know him afterwards. And eventually I went to South Boston to a race that he was running. And I was working 3 or 4 jobs. I was working DuPont lag operator. I was a screen print at Bassett Walker, and I was going to be an engineer and a land surveyor for Lawrence Cockrum. I was like, it's got to be a better way. And I was making $12,000, working 3 jobs, trying to go to college as well. And
Wow.
I was like, it's
$12,000 a day or $12,000 a week or?
about a year.
Oh,
This was in 1897.
Yeah, that's about right. So anyway, Hank took me to South Boston, and we met Dale, and Hank didn't realize at the time.
tell everybody who Hank Jones is.
Hank Jones was one of the kind of the patriarchs of the souvenir business back in the day. He started off representing Bobby Alice and a few others, and then he kind of got Dale's likeness and rights and stuff, and Dale and him kind of partnered up and started a company called Sports Image. And so Hank was into the souvenirs, and of course, the Martinsville Speedway, which a lot of people don't know, was the first track to ever let independent souvenirs on track property. They had a vision. They knew that there was opportunity. And so, and plus, these races, people don't realize, and it's funny because, I listen to y'all's podcast and you guys are on each other all the time, and they say it's about you, it's about me, it's about whatever, but you live in a world, and I had to learn this quickly, it don't move without that driver, right? I mean, the teams own the teams, and, they're there providing what's going on, but these drivers, they don't demand it. It's just everything moves around them. And it's just like in your world as a senator, you know what I'm saying? And a lawyer as well. Everything moves around. So you guys are kind of in control of your destiny. You're kind of in control of your likeness. You're kind of in control of the narrative that goes on. And you have to learn at an early rate that it's all about the driver. The driver makes the world go round, and so. Well,
personality. I mean, remember, it's an auto,
yes.
It's a car, a domestic produced car, and they've gotten away from the way it looks. It used to be, what they say, race them on Sunday, sell them on Monday.
Yeah.
But it's always the driver that drives the personality of even the car.
It drives it. And so I learned at an early age with Dale and Hank and everybody else that, these guys that drive these cars have, an opinion. And, not all the time that it's 100% correct, but generally the opinion that they make is because they went through something already that showed them that it was wrong. And so I learned quickly that, you got to take care of the drivers. And that's one thing that I've always done. And it's why a lot of things that I touch is successful is because I understand where I sit in the realm of things. I understand what the driver needs. I understand what that person needs, and what I try to do is solve it. I don't try to worry about the glass half empty. I really focus on it half full, and how can I make it better? And that's what I'm trying to do in all of my relationships is I build the driver up. I build the personalities up. I build the sport up. I build the sponsors up, because at the same time, that sponsor has the same necessary needs as that driver, right? They got to be represented well. Their brand is what's made them what they are. And
so how does he put you in charge of doing that branding?
Well,
you're a young kid, basically working 3 jobs. You go to South Boston.
Yeah, so I go to work for Hank. I'll give you this. I go to work for Hank, and just like I said, if Dale went to Indianapolis Raceway Park or he went to a lot of these other tracks, I'd volunteer to go. I would volunteer to be the souvenirs. I wanted to be around Dale. I wanted to be around racing. But my work ethic was much different. You know what I'm saying? I solved the problems, and I love communicating to the fan. And so I had a very good niche of how to communicate that and what they were looking for. And so as the years progressed, Dale decided, you know, he had an opportunity to buy the company out by himself. And he come to me and he said, I want you to be a part of it. He said, I trust you. I like what you do. He says, and you know how to lead individuals. You know how to lead people.
How old were you?
At the time, I was probably about 27.
Wow.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I just kept that same integrity. And one of the funniest stories is Dale, you know, was kind of on his own. We had Davey a little bit. We had Michael a little bit. You know, we had a few people. Well, they wanted to buy out Ken Barbie, and we wanted to get much bigger. And Dale had a bigger plan with Bill because let's be honest
For
with you.
DEI. Right?
In the licensing world, it was kind of Sports Image, Motorsports Tradition, and a few others. They didn't really have a conglomerate taking over. This is before the Action Performance days.
Okay.
And so Dale had this vision that to grow the sport as NASCAR was growing nationally, we had to become one. Well, it kind of all changed when Dale wrecked at Talladega and hurt himself pretty bad. He called me after the night after, and he's like, we got to do something different. He said, all their eggs is in one basket, which is him. And he says, I have enough vision to understand we got to go get everybody together. So we went out, got Rusty's contract, and we got Bobby Labonte's and Terry Labonte's. And, you know, that was the first time that we brought everybody in together. And it's so cool because I build these relationships with Elliott and Bobby Labonte's one of my best friends, and, you know, Kevin Harvick's and everybody that come along. But the cool thing about it is I try to give them the perception of exactly what it is. Because if you're honest with them, then they can relate. They can understand what's going on. And that's what I try to do today. And the funniest one was Rusty. When I first got it, Rusty and Dale, you know, they kind of butted heads. They were friends. They were. But when they got to the track, they were competitive. And Rusty come to me and he's like, I want the same treatment, because I'd represented Dale since 88 to 96 until we got everybody in one. And Rusty's like, I want to be treated the same. And so Dale come to me and he said, you got to treat him the same. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm you know, he's got good spots. He's got, you know, everything that he needs. And he says, Chris, he says, everybody sees how you gravitate towards me. You have to give them the same opportunity. And so me and Rusty sat down, and I gave Rusty the map that I would get from the tracks. And I said, Rusty, this is how they give it to me. These are the locations. And
These are merchandise haulers.
Merchandise haulers. We had 100. I had 61 at one time, but we had 134 on track property.
Selling die-cast shirts.
Oh yeah, everything,
hats,
anything,
sweatshirts, jackets.
Hey, in the heyday,
yeah,
on any given weekend,
Yeah.
when Earnhardt was the hottest,
yeah.
how much of the total revenue, how much of the total gross sales of merchandise on a given weekend were Earnhardt?
Back in the heyday when he was winning championship after championship, he was well over 70% of the industry.
70% of the whole industry.
And I can tell you, you know, I won't tell you which tracks, but I can tell you that he would do in excess of $7 to $8 million in one race.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that crazy. Now, of course, 01's a different world, because when he passed, I mean, everybody was out, you know, trying to get all that stuff. But those numbers.
Counterfeiting.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different story. That's a whole diffent story. They were counterfeiting.
But just think about this: of all the, we talk about the star power, and back in those days,
Oh yeah,
I mean, it was 10 or 12 guys that were pretty, you know, well-known championship caliber drivers, and you got one guy selling over 70% of the merchandise at the racetrack. I mean, that's
And he wasn't winning most popular driver from the fans, or
well,
Bill Elliott won.
Bill
that
Elliott won it every year. But let me finish the story, because it builds up to what we're talking about. So Rusty gets the map, right? Rusty gets the map, and I said, Rusty, pick where you want to go. So Rusty picked where he wanted to go, and so what I did is to let him know that I was a little bit stronger in business and what's going on. I moved Earnhardt away from him. I moved him in a different row, and Rusty's sales was actually down for the first time. And Rusty comes to me the next week, and he's like, what's going on? And I said, look, I said, me and John Bickford talked about this a long time ago. If you can see Dale's trailer, there's so many people in line trying to buy his product that all the trailers around him gets the runoff, right? Well, I'll get these earplugs over here. I'll get this over here. Well, I like Rusty enough to get this. And people didn't realize that, because what I was trying to do was just not block up that aisle, because wherever Earnhardt's trailer was, the row was blocked. And so Rusty wanted to be in that spot, but he didn't realize that you had to be in sight of Dale Earnhardt to have an opportunity to make money. Wow. And so when we went the next week, Rusty's like, what happened? That's the first time I've been X amount of sales. And I told him, and he says, you know what? Just like Dale, I trust you. You do what's right. And so I started doing that with the top drivers and showing them how we can make more money if you just let me control the foot traffic.
Hey, the same thing applies with like convenience stores, truck stops, and restaurants. That's the business we're in.
Right.
And most people that don't know any better, like when a new restaurant, or especially a name recognizable restaurant, gets their name up on a signboard off Interstate 95 or 85, people will be like, man, I bet you're mad that Chick-fil-A is coming, or I bet you're mad that so-and-so's coming. We're like, no.
Yeah.
Because the more traffic that gets drawn off that interstate to come, that means we got more chances to sell a gallon of gas or a Snickers bar or whatever. So the more people you get in that group, everybody has a chance to do better.
Yep, absolutely. And so, you know, as that started progressing, you know, there was just a lot more respect from the drivers, because they know they can rely on me to do what was right, not only for the sport, not only for foot traffic, right, but also giving them the opportunity to make as much as they can. And these drivers, you know, back in the very early days, they didn't do a lot of autograph sessions. I mean, every once in a while they would do it. And we sat down and just said, hey, man, give us this time. And Elliott, I'll tell you, Elliott and Hermie both, they gravitated towards it. I mean, Elliott was a very likable guy, and NASCAR used Elliott a lot. People don't realize that if they needed him to do a personal appearance or whatever, and Elliott always done it. Elliott was that driver that was accessible, and a lot of them.
Well, you know, one of the kids is always good looking and nice, and the other one, you know.
And the other one's sitting here looking at you. You ever have a moment, Chris, when you just think, I'm sure you have, like, how the hell did I end up here?
Why am I doing this?
What am I doing? I'm having one of those moments.
Well, it happens all the time. You know. But anyway, it's been that ride and that era, and Hermie can tell you, in the 92 till the 2005 era, it'll never happen again. Number one. So. Well, no. It's not that I don't think. It's just NASCAR was growing so quick. The age of phones was different, you know, because stuff.
Even the age of drivers. I mean, most of the drivers were older and began older. I mean, I think Jeff Gordon was the kind of era when all of a sudden, who's this young kid?
Yeah, and you know, back then, the stories that was going on at the track, and whether it was the partying or whether it was the you know, inside the infield at night, or whether it was at the bar, nobody had these cameras, and so everybody was a little bit more fluent, you know what I'm saying? And it was fun because it was nobody telling on somebody, and it's not that they were doing something wrong. They was just out having fun. Well, then now you have phones, and if they see somebody at a bar, then, you know, sponsors are worried about it. You know what I'm saying?
You could lose a sponsor by doing something.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so it kind of changed the demographics of what was going on. But the drivers understood how they could market and manage. And then Action Performance come along, let's be honest, and it changed the game. Fred Wagonall come in, and Dale sold the company, so I moved lateral from being vice president of Sports Image to vice president of Action Performance. And then Fred just brought a lot more money in, you know, a lot more guarantees. I mean, I've heard drivers and I've heard car owners said they made more money, you know, in the 96 era to 05 than they ever made the rest of the time in NASCAR, because Fred was bringing in bigger sponsors. They were bringing in movie contracts, movie sponsors, the Jurassic Park deal, you know, with Gordon. And so the whole money flux into NASCAR elevated from that 96 to 2005 realm. So
talking about a night you remember always, and I've told Chris this story before, but so I had raced against Earnhardt a couple of times when I came in 93. Ran against him in a couple of Busch races, but So I'm racing the Virginia's for Lovers car, the first Richmond race in the spring of '93. Charlie Spencer and a group of guys over at Heritage Chevrolet in Chester, Lenny Pond, all them, asked me about coming to do an appearance with them. Because I was driving a Chevrolet, that Oldsmobile at the time, I think, for Don Beverly. So I said, sure. And then they told me after the fact, they said, well, it's with Dale Earnhardt. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is something. I was staying at the Omni Hotel, and Charlie Spencer just said, we'll come pick you up at 6 o'clock, just making up a number. We'll come pick up at 6 o'clock at the hotel. I'm like, okay. I've known Charlie a long time through the car business, you know. Well, they pull around in a white van, and I get in the van, and it's Charlie in there and Don Hawk and Dale Earnhardt. Mm-hmm. They picked me up with Big E in the truck, in the van.
That's awesome. And
I'm like, man, I'm in. But so we went, and he just made me feel like, as you know, he could be. Dale was, in a lot of ways, he understood like the WWE gimmick or personality, like the way he was riding in the car to an appearance.
He wanted to be mysterious, and he
was open just like us.
100%.
But now when he got to we pulled up to the dealership, and there's 10,000 people.
He changed,
wrapped around.
Yep.
He put the glasses on and put the black leather jacket on.
Yep.
And he was a badass.
Yep.
But driving in the car, he was just talking, hey, y'all do any hunting? How about your brother? Because Elliot was running late models at the time, asking all these things. And I'm like, that ain't the Dale Earnhardt I see at the racetrack. Then when I got to the appearance, that's the one.
Yeah.
But so we get there, and I don't want to exaggerate, but I know it had to be 10,000 people there. They were wrapped all the way around the building, and they had sold like armbands.
Yep.
So they go, first of all y'all guys are over there. Every time somebody's got to counterfeit something, they're just taking people's stuff from them.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm like, somebody's going to get shot over here.
Yeah.
But what I remember about Dale, so let's just say we were signing from 7 to 9.
Yeah.
9 o'clock gets there, and there's still 7,000 people there. And Dale gets up and puts his jacket on and said, all right, buddy, let's roll.
Yep.
I'm like,
I'm telling you, it's and they didn't get mad.
But that particular night, Dale walked off with his group, and he came back about 5 minutes later and sat down again. And he said, we're here for another hour.
That's because the dealership had to give him a little bit more money to stay.
Yeah. So I asked him later, I said, what happened there? And he kind of chuckled, and I think at the time they paid him an extra $15,000 to stay for an extra hour. This was 1993.
Yep.
But he told me then, which was, we had some, racing, this, that, and the other, but he said, I'm going to tell you something now. If you ever get into a situation where you can make it, you got to make it.
Yeah.
Because it's not always going to be that way.
Yeah.
But there was people still wrapped around the building 3 times, and he stood right up and put it, and then he sat right back down. Now, once he sat back down, he was good, but it was business.
Yeah.
It was business.
Unbelievable. I laugh. You talk about that. Did you see him get paid? I'm sure it was cash. It wasn't a check.
Oh, it was a duffel bag.
Yeah. So
what'd you get paid?
I got paid to be able to hang out with Dale Earnhardt.
You got a couple, and that
Chevy
was worth it
t-shirts.
all.
That was worth it all to me.
Yeah, I used to go with him to different tracks and stuff, and I laughed.
I had a little bit of mine was an obligation I had with General Motors.
Yeah.
Because I had just, through the help of General Motors in 1992, purchased Sadler Auto Center, which ended up being Sadler Auto Center of South Hill.
Yeah.
So I'm 25 years old, and with the help of General Motors, bought a car dealership in South Hill. So at the time, I was the youngest General Motors dealer in the country.
And you're with Superman now.
Yeah. So my appearance was regarded. I was doing something for Chevrolet.
Yeah.
And Dale was being paid by the dealership or whatever. But he, you think about it now, like in those days, he's getting 15, 20 grand, 25 grand in 1993 for sometimes 1 hour, sometimes 2 hour appearance, and selling merch.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah. A lot of times if he was going to a dealership, duffel bag or some type of bag. But
Yeah.
there was a lot of times he'd go to the track and he'd want to get paid cash.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this. Not very few people know this, but he'd put the money in his boot. So he would stuff the cash down in his boot. And I say, what happens? What happens if you drop it? He said, you'll pick it up. And he'd always run because a lot of times you couldn't park in the infield at these short tracks. You'd have to be on the outside. And so we'd run to the car or we'd run to the van or whatever. And I'd be always looking to see where the cash is falling out. But it'd always stay in that boot. He'd packing in around
But
the boot.
I've always been so, I know Elliot feels this way too. Elliot got close with, Dale Sr.
Oh, yeah.
Interest of hunting and actually closer with Dale Jr. But I've always appreciated how I was then and am now still in the big scheme of things a nobody. And this guy, made me feel like, made me feel important. And I'll always remember those times that I got to spend with him, that I was lucky to be able to do that. But he always made me feel like I belonged there just like he did.
Yeah, he never forgot who was around him, and who helped him along the way. Never. I got a funny one too. So we were at the Martinsville Speedway, and he would always fly in a helicopter, and I'd either pick him up in the Mule or the Blazer or whatever. It's Tahoe I was driving or whatever. This particular time it was a Blazer, and I'd pick him up to the helicopter pad. And we would go to pit road, and a lot of times he'd be late, and this one particular time he's sitting there, and the practice had already started, and they're calling him on the phone and stuff, and he's like, what? He says, I'll be in there in a minute. I mean, how many laps I got to run at Martinsville? So he said, I want to sit and talk to you. So we was talking about life and a lot of different things that we talked about, hunting a lot and stuff. And this guy had this big old camera trying to get a picture of him, and so he leans in, and he's in the car. We got the windows up, and it's in the Blazer. And I'm sitting over there, and he'd lean in, and the camera would hit the car, right? It'd hit the car. It'd hit the car. He says, if it hits this car one more time, and sure enough, the guy leans in, hits the car. He said, hey, you're tearing the guy's car up. He said, back off. I'll see you in a second. He rolls the window up, and everybody that was standing there, which at the time, anytime Earnhardt was around, was 2,000 people. It was like, whew, they all backed away from the car. He said, that'll save you a dent. I looked at him. I said, it's your car, bud. He said, this is my Blazer. I said, yeah. He said, shit. So, but I mean, Dale was, he knew everything that was going on. He knew he had a great relationship with Bill. The drivers would come to him.
Bill France.
Yeah, Bill France. And he would always, kind of be the voice of reasoning and what's going on. And sometimes Bill would tell him, this is what we need to do. And he'd go be the voice for the drivers as well. And NASCAR kind of revolved around it. I got to be sitting in a car or sitting in a house or sitting in a coach or sitting in a hunting lodge, and Bill would call, and I would get to hear half of the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And I learned at an early age that it didn't really move unless Dale was involved in it, the whole sport.
Now, when it came to Martinsville, your dad's general manager.
Yeah.
Martinsville, one of the greatest tracks, I think, in all of NASCAR.
I love it.
What I think I heard was that when he would come to Martinsville, if he had a car or even a rental car, he would park it in your mama's yard.
Yeah, yeah.
In your parents' yard.
Yeah. So my mom and dad live on a racetrack road, and Dale was the very first one that ever parked up there, and we gave him the spot on the corner so they could back it in, and when they come out, they would just leave. And so he would come up the road. Sometimes he'd ride in an ambulance, or sometimes he'd ride in a wreck truck, or somebody sometimes would give him a ride. Very seldom. And he's actually the very first one that built his own transportation at track. So when he owned Sports Image, and we were talking about, he said, I want you to come pick me up. I'm tired of, trying to do all these things. And so he built this mule, and we built it the first year. We bought it, and the first race at Daytona, he got rained on. He said, you bring that thing up to the garage, up to the race shop. And he built a whole top on it. This was before Kawasaki or anybody ever had tops on these things. And Dale built it, and they started building them around it. So Dale had the vision of this is what's going on. And so we would ride him to wherever his car was parked or his helicopter was or whatever the case would be. We would ride him in that. But yes, he Richard Childers started parking up there, and now all the drivers park up there. But the cool thing was when Dale came in, Darrell Waltrip said this on an interview here not long ago. he said that he thought Dale and them stopped liking some of the drivers because he'd always go to like Chris Williams' house and parked his coach at the house and stuff of that nature. But he done it just because, you know, at night we would cook steaks or whatever, and, you know, he couldn't let Teresa know he was eating steak, you know, because she always had him on chicken or fish or something else, and he wanted steak. But we had a lot of good times from the family side with Dale, and I had a lot of personal time with him hunting and doing other things, and you know, they're cherished. And you know, I you know, when the book comes out, it's going to be impressive because I mean, I'm not even touching the surface of what's going on with Dale.
Well, and you're going to need an attorney, and I'm ready to do that. Now, I know Hermie's going to read our sponsorship spiel right now, but when he finishes that, I want to ask you both about the 2 Daytonas.
Oh, sure.
The one that he won, and then his last one.
Sure.
Pace O Matic is an entertainment company which develops gaming software that players love to play and can use their skills to win every time. Pace O Matic is focused on people having fun, the small businesses that love them, and generates millions of dollars in Virginia. And Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator is powered by Pace O Matic, and we appreciate Pace O Matic being involved with this podcast, the sponsor of Sadler Stanley Racing, which will debut this weekend, and the Smart Modified Tour at Florence, South Carolina, which, ironically enough, is also now powered by Pace O Matic. So a sincere thank you to everybody at Pace O Matic.
Time to tell you about something I'm super passionate about: protecting your family. Yes, this is a life insurance ad for GoliathLife.com, but to me, this is really about peace of mind. Think about insurance for a second. We all get medical and auto insurance, yet we never even know if we're going to have a need for it. Let me let you in on a little secret. You need life insurance. We're all going to die. Now, as you let that reality sink in, think about what would happen if your family stopped having your income tomorrow. If you don't have a plan for that, you need to visit GoliathLife.com, and I mean right now. And just personally, I've lost 2 friends in their 40s this past year and a half, and I don't even want to think about what their families would be going through had they not had life insurance. If you don't have it, get it. Protect your family. And I suggest you go to GoliathLife.com because they've made the process of getting affordable life insurance super easy. Goliath Life streamlines the life insurance process by allowing you to get quotes for more than 20 carriers within minutes. And you'll pick your terms and payments to fit your budget. You pick your price, you start the online application immediately, and even schedule the medical exam to come to you. And I've done it. They sent someone to my office. I skipped the phone calls, the paperwork, and the crazy invasive conversations. Goliath Life makes buying life insurance simple. There's no hidden fees, no upsells, no hassle, hell, not even a phone call. Goliath Life is life insurance in your hands on your time. Get multiple quick quotes right now from the comfort of your own home and begin your application in a few easy clicks right now at GoliathLife.com.
And how do you get your tickets to go to Florence? Tell the listeners right now how they can go see the opening race of the 2022 season.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go online if you hadn't already done so. You can go online and go to Florence Speedway, go on their website, order tickets. You can also go onto our new website, and it has a link that you can click on, and it'll take you straight to the track.
What's that website address?
It's smartmodtour.com. So
Smart, SMARTMOD TOUR.com.
Yep, that's our new website. It's going extremely well. We worked on it in the last 4 months, just trying to get it prepared, and it has a lot of information about our sponsors and everything else. So that's how you can do it, and we'd love to see everybody there. It's going to be a great race. You know, we haven't even talked a little bit about this, but we've got about 7 or 8 new race cars that's coming on the tour this year. We averaged 21 last year. I think that number is going to be much more this year. And let's be honest, I mean, Flo, you know, the reason why they wanted us is because they said they watched a lot of grassroots racing, and our series with the live pit stops and the stage that we put together just kind of changed the way the look of TV and racing was, and they wanted to be a part of it because for 7 races, 7 winners, you know, 7 different poles, and so they loved it. So we have something to offer, not only from the drivers that are in there. We've got like 11 champions. We have Hall of Famers in our series. And so and with the addition of new teams like yourself, that is bringing quality crew and racers. It's going to be competitive, and it's going to be exciting.
And we've plugged in your website with our website. You can always reach the podcast and our race team, the Sadler Stanley Racing Team, at www.sadlerstanleyracing.com. You can tell I didn't get the front.
Yeah, that's okay. It happens.
It wasn't much of a fight.
Yeah.
Now, look, something that's always interested me, because as a race car fan, watching it for so many years, watching all the times that Dale came so close but didn't win, watching him, I guess he dropped a tire coming in the last turns and won Daytona.
Yeah, hit a seagull.
Seagull one.
Yeah, ran out of gas. Him and Bodine, the big deal in '86. He ran out of gas. I mean, it just it ached him. It really did ache him.
I'm guessing both of you were there when he finally won. Am I correct?
100%. Yeah.
Tell the listeners, tell me what happened, what you felt like, how he felt when he won the big one, because that was always the thing that they always said: can he win the big one? He can win all these races and championships, but he can't win the Super Bowl of
He
racing.
won the Gatorade qualifying race, 8 or 9 years in a row or something?
9 straight years.
Nine
straight Rolexes, by the way. 9. And I never got one, but that's beside the point.
Doesn't bother you at all, does it?
No. He done a lot for me, my career, and just a lot of other things for our family, and my whole family's in it. My son Spots, and so his trail for me was blazed. Right, he done good for me. But I'll tell you, leading up to that week, he just had a different walk. I mean, he had a chance to win. I think about Todd Parrott and them guys that was working, on the 28 car, and that was Jarrett on the 88 car. Mm-hmm. They were always that let's face it, they call it the Roush motor, right? Yeah. It was always strong, but it was just a sense that week that something was going to happen, and that week he was positive. He'd won the races up to that, and he won, and the crowd was unbelievable. I mean, when I was on the souvenir trailer, we were chanting Earnhardt, Earnhardt, Earnhardt. We were backed up 20 deep, and funny how it all. Even normally blow-offs, we call the time of sale after the race a blow-off. Normally they last about 45 minutes to an hour. Well, we were an hour and a half into this thing. I mean, it was unbelievable. This is one of them $7 million days is what I'm trying to tell you. And all of a sudden, Earnhardt rides by on the back of a motorcycle. This
is after he's won the 98 Daytona 500.
Yeah, he's going up to Unical 76. Dale always went to Unical 76 no matter what, and toasted victory with sponsors and Unical and everybody else. But this particular time, he was going to Bill Francis Suite, and he drove by, right? And he laughed. And he grinned with that shit-eating grin that he always had. And I'm like, yeah. The crowd they start following it. And I'm like, whoa. They took him away from me, but here they come back. So later that night, because he stayed for a long time, he really relished that moment. I mean, he stayed till dark 30. It was crazy.
I remember him doing an interview on ESPN. Like it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was late
crazy.
Interview.
But I'll never forget when he was leaving. We were, we had to count money, and I mean, it took a while. And we were down there counting, and I heard something drive up a car. So I went out, and it was Dale. And I walked over there, and I said, I'm pumped because that's my man, right? He said, how about that shit? I mean, that's what it was. I mean, that's how it went down. And he says, you staying in the morning? And I'm like, well, yeah, because, generally we would stay a half a day and sail the next day because, we'd do hundreds of $1,000s the next day on the winter. I said, yeah. And he said, yeah, I'll be here, because they had to induct the car in the Hall of Fame, right. All that stuff that was going on. And he was just so pumped up that night. It was the most amazing thing because that's the one, that's the check mark that every driver, Hermie's made. I got to win South Boston. I got to win this. I won Orange County. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There's just certain tracks you check it off, and it's Dale. That was the exclamation point. To be honest with you,
1998. What are your memories? Dale's victory at Daytona.
Yeah, to me, I was there racing as a teammate with my brother at Diamond Ridge in the Busch Grand National Series. But I just remember the Daytona 500 win is just, I knew by that time how big that was for the sport. Whether or not you were a Dale Earnhardt fan or not, if you loved NASCAR, you knew how big that was for the sport. You always look for ways to for your sport to get mainstream coverage, not just the bubble we lived in. And Dale always got that anyway, but to win that Daytona 500, I just remember, and being around him a little bit the following week and all that, it just seemed like it's hard to really believe that it was like that, but that weighed on him.
Oh yeah.
It don't matter how many championships and races, and he had more money than he could ever spend and all that, but I just don't think he would have, although he wouldn't always say it. He wouldn't want people to know it got to him, but I don't think he would have been at peace.
Yeah.
If he hadn't pulled it off.
They always say that Dale could see the wind, could see the air, could see the draft.
Yeah.
Was he a person that was, based things on luck? I mean, because it always seemed like bad luck that cost him the race. It always seemed sometimes to be in the most heartbreaking of ways. I mean, was he superstitious? Did he believe in luck?
He was superstitious. I mean, there's some times that some things happen with some peanuts and different things that he was very superstitious. He didn't like green on anything that we did in the souvenir trailer. I remember one cap we did, Shark Bite, had a green undertone on the bill. And it didn't matter that we made 6,000 of them. He could get rid of them. I don't want the green underneath it. And so he was superstitious to a certain extent.
Wasn't there a penny that he glued to it?
Well, that was the Daytona 500 win that the kid had gave him, and and that's a story in itself. Dale was passionate, but he cared, and he helped that kid. He helped a kid, that was dying, and when Dale talked to you, he wanted to know about you. He didn't want to really talk racing unless that was his business. He wanted to get to know you about hunting. He wanted to get to know you about fishing, or he wanted to get to know what made you turn. And when he found out, what was going on with the kid, he wanted to find out, could he help, or, what was going on, or how long they had to live. And he was very cordial to the parents. He really cared. And he actually, I won't give you the numbers, but that shot to a particular kid that was dying, and they said he had less than 7 or 8 months to live. He asked the parents what can happen, and they said, we can give him the shot. And Dale paid for the shot for almost over a year and a half, and that kid lived longer. He paid for it, and that was expensive money. Like I said, I'm not going to tell the number, but I know that to be true because I know Collier was flying the kid out west, the guy that flew for him, in the plane, and the conversations happened about how that all went down. And one time I was coming up Highway 3. The house is not there anymore, but I'd go hunting with Dale on his property, and we would hunt. And me and Dale had hunted the previous week at Charlotte, and then the next week it was always Martinsville back in the fall. And we come by and we seen this gentleman pushing an older lady in a wheelchair across some gravels to this modular home. And me and Dale both at the same time, because we were driving together from the racetrack at Charlotte, and we drove by, and we both looked. It's his, technically his neighbor, not too far from his house, and we both looked, never said a word, didn't say anything. So the next week, Dale calls me and he said, "Hey, before you go to the Wilkesboro," he said, "I want you to come by and hunt with me on Thursday. Then you go on, park and do whatever you got to do with the trailers." And I said, "Sure, I'll be there. I'll come around 1 o'clock." He said, "Yeah, we'd be in a tree stand about 3. So I go up Highway 3 and I go by that same gravel lot or whatever for that home. And I was just amazed. It was pavement, no more gravel, and it was a ramp up to this modular home. And I knew immediately Dale did it. Knew immediately. And so I get there, I pull up. Back then it was the brand new Taj Mahal, and so they knew you was coming, and they hit the gate, and you just pull in. I pull into the bush, the deer head shop, and I walked in. I said, "Man, I seen the dangest thing." And he looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Man, so remember last week when we seen that man, pushing that woman in a wheelchair? He got that shit-eating grin." He said, "What happens at the farm stays at the farm." And he meant it for his neighbors too. But Dale was that kind of person that a lot of people never seen, because he wanted to be mysterious. He wanted people to not
the
know.
persona.
He wanted to do it.
The intimidator.
Yeah, but he was
a
very,
softie.
He was a heart. He was a good man.
Okay, and so and we're learning so much. I mean, and believe me, for the listeners, we're going to have you on a bunch, Chris, because, we've got a whole race series to go through. We're going to be doing our podcast locally at the race scene. We're going to catch the flavors for you of the Smart Series Tour. But as we wind down this podcast, as we've talked about the great release when he won the Daytona 500 in 1998, you both were there when we lost Dale. If you can, give us both your perspective, if it's not too painful.
Yeah, I had raced on Saturday, and I was spotting for my brother on Sunday. And at Daytona, we typically had multiple spotters. You'd have somebody on the front stretch and then have somebody on the back stretch. So I was spotting for Elliott. He was driving for the Wood Brothers. I was spotting on the back stretch. And Elliott had gotten into not a wreck that put him out of the race, but he had gotten dinged up on something early in the race, so he was just kind of riding around trying to finish. And the other thing that Chris knows also is just as competitive as the racing is on the track, there's an even bigger race to get to the airport.
Absolutely.
After a race to come home, because and these guys had these jet airplanes and stuff. If you were late getting in line to fly out at a place like Daytona, you sit on the jetway for 2.5 hours. Burning fuel.
Yep.
It cost you $10,000 to sit there on the jetway. So it was really so I had been there the whole time. And so Elliott was not in the lead draft at the end. He was back because he was damaged. So when Elliott came by me for the last time, I started coming down off the backstretch grandstands and was running to get to the airport because I knew, because Elliott and them would get on golf carts still in the uniform and haul butt to the airport. So within 15 minutes of the race being over, we were on the airplane and had no idea. I didn't even see the wreck. But Elliott, so I was the first one to the plane. Then Elliott and Brett and the rest of our crowd, we hauled butt to the plane and we buttoned up because back in those days we didn't have like a Sirius radio or anything like that. So we didn't have any entertainment on the plane.
But Elliott went by the crash.
He did.
But he just didn't think it was.
Oh, he got on the plane and I said, got ready to take off. And I said, man, sorry you had a bad day, whatever. And he said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, who won? And he said, Michael Waltrip won, And then, I said, I heard a bunch of people hollering on the last lap. What happened? He said, yeah, Earnhardt and Schrader and some of them got hung up, on turn 4. Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
We didn't have any idea that it was any kind of big deal at all. And we took right off. We left.
Yeah.
And like I said, we had no communication. Now you get on these planes, you can communicate and you can text and all this. Yeah. We didn't have any of that. So when we landed in Emporia and we pulled around and taxied up to the house there in Emporia, my mom and my dad and my sister met us at the airport, which was strange in itself, especially Elliott didn't win and I didn't win on Saturday. So, it was odd to see them. So we pulled around, taxied around, let the door down and got off. And they walked up to the side of the plane and just looked at us and they were all like white.
Yeah.
And what's wrong? And my dad said, Dale Earnhardt died, got killed. And we're like, what? We had no idea. And Elliott, to your point, I never saw it live because I was already on the way to the airplane. But Elliott drove by it and saw it and got on the plane and just didn't.
Yeah.
Because he didn't make
it didn't
another
look like
loop
that
around.
bad Iraq. Not even to us that were just watching on the TV. We never thought that was what was serious.
So
And let me say one more thing before Chris starts.
Yeah.
We learned a lot about the angles of when you hit walls.
Yeah.
And because of that, we had we had some other people to get injured and get killed in race cars. But we all, as an industry, we always found a way to, his car wasn't good but when it happened to him, it was like, so I guess what I'm saying is we learned so much from that wreck, not only from a wall standpoint, angles, but safety. That's really when the safety revolution
Oh yeah.
kicked into high gear, because then it went from, I don't know about that guy, to if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's when things happen. But we did not know until we got back to Emporia.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I got some memoirs and stuff that I'm doing for a book, but I'm gonna ease into this because it's pretty interesting. So 18 days before, the tragic day, I was hunting with Dale at the farm, and we were in the same tree stand because we always hunted, and he'd hang one above you or whatever, and he would sit there and talk to you in your ear and making sure you weren't going to shoot a buck that he didn't want shot. It's just Dale's deal. And he stops for a second and he says, "Hey, they want me to quit." I was like, "All right." I said, "Who's they?" And they said, "The doctor and Teresa." I said, "I got my neck fixed." And they said, "If I have a frontal impact anymore, it could kill me." And I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute." I said,
Was this after Talladega, or was this what wreck caused the?
he suffered through that for a couple of years. If you remember, he had that mysterious deal happen to him at Darlington.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of it because he never got the neck fixed and stuff. And I don't think anybody's ever told this story. It's never been known to many people of what was going on. I mean, it ain't been talked to, Teresa or anybody else. I mean, it's just hadn't been. But I mean, I lived it. I was there. I know. And so I was like, well, if it's health related, quit. We had an extensive another hour conversation about all of it. But he told me at that if he had a frontal impact, he could probably perish. And so we go to Daytona, and nobody think about it. I mean, he ran good down there that week. If you remember, he had that unbelievable save in the IROC series.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't win, but, that's when he, walked up to what's his name and told him, I've never punched a man in a car to get out, but, he ended up not hitting him. But the whole week was unbelievable. And, that morning of the 500, I never really asked Dale for an autograph. I mean, I got plenty of them, but I never asked for one. And Jay Whitney, that represented Coke, Dale had drove the Trans Am car the week before. And we had got the cars in the day before, and the president and a few people from Coca-Cola wanted the car signed, the Corvette. And so I'm like, Jay's like, you got to get it. You got to get it. You got to get it now. And this was Sunday. I mean, you just didn't approach Dale on Sunday. There's a lot that the drivers do the same thing, but it just so happens Dale was doing a couple of interviews. A lot of people seen him. You're going to see something you've never seen today. It was on the broadcast. It was, it was the whole deal that morning. And so Dale pops inside, and I said, "Hey, let me handle this. Just let me figure it out, because I'm like, how am I going to get this signed?" And I knew they were going to walk out straight.
Which says a lot about Dale Earnhardt when the guy that's his sidekick every day about merchandise does not want to ask for his autograph.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and
when he's in that mode.
Yeah, when he's in that mode, and you knew when to approach him. Yeah. You knew. And so I waited and waited. So how it used to be, about 38 minutes back then. You would go out, walk through the garage and go on pit road, go to the driver intro, sit at your car for 10 minutes, take a few pictures, bolt up, right? So I knew the only chance I had to get these autographs was to wait till he was walking to pit road. It's the only chance I had. So he comes out and he sees me, but he sees the Coke guys there, Jay Whitney and all those guys with these big jackets on from Coke. He says, "What do you need?" Dale had a way of expressing to everybody what was going on and what's happening. And I said, "Dale, these cars come in and these Coke execs would like to have your autograph." He said, I don't do this on race day. He's giving me the down and out. I mean, just like, "Chris, you know better than this," but he's signing the whole time, right? Signing the whole time. And I was like, I got it done, but man, I'm taking a butt chewing, he's giving it to me, right? So he signs the last one, and he turns around and he said, "This one's Chris." The last one he signed, right? He said, "This one's Chris." I was like, okay. He grabs me like he always does. He always grabs you. He grabs your neck.
Whatever that muscle is at the top of your neck.
And he would just bring you down, right? Well, he grabs me, and he says, "Walk with me." So we start walking to pit road, and he says, "They won't ask for that shit again," because he gave me such a hard time. He knew that J&M wouldn't ask that favor anymore. He says, "Make sure you get that last one." And to this day, I have that autograph Corvette. And it could be the last autograph ever. But anyway, so we walk out on pit road, and when we got to pit road, he said, I got work to do. So him and Teresa just walk out, go to driver's intro and stuff of that nature. So I go out to the souvenir traders, as I always did. And by that time, we're doing money drops. There's a lot of process that goes on, but I love watching the race. I mean, I always watch the start, and then I go back and finish my deal. So I got done. And anyway, we're sitting there with a couple laps to go, and I always had Dale and them's radio in my deal because we had a private channel, just me and Dale. And, there's times during the day, not a race day, but he'd say, hey, Chris, go to private channel. I'd turn it over, and he'd say, bring me hats or bring me this or how much we done, because he was always intrigued. He had his hands and his pulse on everything that went on in the series. And so we got about 2 laps to go, and I realized that Dale wasn't going to win the race. I knew he was blocking. Something that he never did. He blocked to win, but he never blocked for somebody else to win. And I knew it. And I almost got depressed, but I also knew at that time he was doing something that he's never done before.
2 DEI cars, right?
Yeah. And I, like I said, it was air coming out of me, but whatever. All of a sudden, the TV is like, 8 seconds or so behind what's going on. We're souvenir trailers outside turn 4. And I see this big smoke, and I hear this big thump, and I was like, And Danny Culler, Dale's spotter, says, Dale, you all right? And man, I mean, right now as I'm talking, I got these cold
on the radio.
chills. Oh yeah, and I knew. I knew. I didn't know. I knew it was serious because 18 days earlier, I knew what he had told me, and I'm like, what's going on? So I told Chuck Sylvie, I said, let's get in the mule. Let's take off because everybody's going to start coming out of the tunnel in a minute. You know what I'm saying? So we go through the tunnel, and as you go through the tunnel, I said, stop. He said, what? I said, stop. So I ran up on the bank, and that's when Schrader got to the car, and he started waving, and the sick feeling just came again, and it's like, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? So I go in. I go through the garage, and Becky, Dale had a masseuse, because his neck hurt for a couple of years there and stuff, and she would give him massages and stuff, and she come through, and she was crying, she just hugging me, and I'm like, well, you don't know anything. At the time, I didn't know, and so I went to the hauler, and David Allen was there. David represented Wrangler back in the day, represented GM Goodwrench, a lot of different things. And me and David's really good friends. And David says, hey, I want everybody to get in the hauler. I mean, I'm talking about all crews. I'm talking about all the team members, everybody. He said, you too, Chris. And I'm like, Chuck, come with me, because I didn't know what was going on. And Dave, we shut the hauler doors. I mean, they shut everything. And David says, let's say a prayer, and David goes through the whole prayer deal, and he says, Lord, I just want you to wrap your arms around the team, and I want you to be with us for what we're about to go through. And I knew at that moment it was bad, like extremely bad. And so Wayne Patterson, Bill Patterson that worked for Richard and them, they needed a ride. And so we got a bunch of them on the mule, and we drove out. I mean, we drove out of the tunnel. We drove down
to the hospital?
To the hospital on the mule.
Mm-hmm.
And we go in the back of the hospital, and as I'm going in, Tony Stewart is coming out because he flipped 25 laps to go, and he had to go to the hospital. And he says, anything I'll ever do for you, all you got to do is ask. So I mean, strike two, So he wouldn't be telling me unless something was going on. So we walked through.
I never thought about that part. I remember Tony crashed, and I remember his hood flew up in the stands that time. Yeah.
And so I won't tell you the next part of the scenario because it involves some other people that was already, in the emergency room side. I won't get into it. So we went into the chapel. Everybody that was friends, family, or souvenir people like myself or crew members had to go into the chapel. And basically, I won't tell you the moment, but somebody come in and told us we had lost Dale. And that moment in time, there's a lot more to that story and a lot about what I can say, but it changed everything going forward. Everything. I mean, it changed the perception of the sport. It changed the safety in the sport. It changed how everybody approached not only the drivers but the race in itself. It changed how they covered the sport on TV. I mean, everything changed. But, you know, at that moment, I knew I had to leave and go shut down the trailers because that's just what we did. You know, I represented some other folks. I mean, Davey Allison had passed, and we just had to shut the trailers down. So we went out and shut them down. And, you know, I had to tell, you know, my family at that time, you know, they were at the condo because, as Hermie stated, nobody knew what was going on. And to be honest with you, I had to tell them. And I mean, the only thing I could say and do is I've lost my best friend. I mean, I didn't know how to say it. There's a lot more to that. There's a lot more after that, but that memory instills, you know, a day in life that, you know, I hate that everybody that's associated with them had to go through. But, you know, at the same time, you know, a lot of things has changed. There's not been another driver pass away since then. I'm not saying everything that caused that wreck was, you know, forefront of the angles and everything else, but it made them think about what could happen.
That's right.
And if it saved the next person, then, you know, bless everybody that was involved, and bless the Hans devices, bless everything else that, you know, had to be transpired after that, because, you know, there's a lot of things in life that we go through, but you can't replace a Bill Stanley. You can't replace Hermie
Certainly
Sadler.
not a Dale Earnhardt, and he lives in immortality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
If you got to go, I guess unfortunately that's the way.
Well,
but I'm looking at you right now, and I see the joy of that bond that you had with him, those years and moments and times which you cherished, as you say. And also, you can still see the real pain that still sits.
Oh yeah, I mean,
hasn't gone away.
As soon as you asked the question, and if I took my shirt off right now, I mean, I've got goosebumps, because you can't. Like I said, you only hear half the story. You only hear a little bit about the conversation. We talked about death. Me and Dale did that day, 18 days before it. And he goes into a lot of depth about it, you know, about the whole transformation, about, you know, what is a true tragedy. I won't get into that right now, but we talked about it. And so I do have reluctance. First time anybody's ever heard the story, to be honest with you.
Powerful.
It is, and it's more powerful than that. But at the same time, I cherish life lessons from the drivers and people I represented, especially my best friend at the time, Dale. And, you know, he taught me a lot. And everybody that ever thought about what Dale represented and what he did represent the common man. He did represent hard work. He did represent grassroots growing up into the sport, where your daddy just didn't have the money for you to drive. I mean, he had to truly drive to get where he was at. He struggled in monies, and we talked about a lot of those scenarios. And, you know, but along the way, I'm just glad I was just a teeny part of the journey.
What an incredible story you have, Chris Williams. I really want to thank you for sharing that part. I know there's always going to be part of that story that remains private.
Yep.
But to share that part with us and you too, Hermie, because those are two milestones, I think, in everybody's life who's a race fan. And because we all knew where we were when that happened.
I kind of want to pivot back to something a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah.
When I think mostly about Dale now, I think, what would Dale say if he walked into a board meeting right now with what's going on with our sport? I kind of chuckle about it.
Well,
because he was such a stickler for things being a certain way and what NASCAR represented. And I don't know this, but I sometimes I don't think he would jive.
Well, the rest of that story, I'll give you a little bit of this to take with you. When I asked him what he would do if he didn't race, he told me exactly what he was going to do. He told me how he was going to do it and who was involved. And to what you're saying right now, and you know this, if I'm telling you this, then you know he was going to be a part of it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So if he's the decision maker, right, it wouldn't be going in a certain way that people think it would be.
Oh, no. And what a glorious sport it would remain to this day. Chris Williams, I really want to thank you for opening up. You know, we have a lot of fun together. All three of us have a lot of laughs, and we've had some today. But I think we've entered into some territory and some memories that I think are really important to share, especially with our listeners, and because that's history.
Yeah.
And when we talk about preserving the history of racing, your memories are part of that history, and preserving that are just as important. So
And
I'm just blown away by this whole podcast today, and I really appreciate it, Chris.
I do think that he hopefully is smiling down on you now for what you're doing with the Smart Modified Tour and the grassroots racing and what we're trying to do and what Bill and I have done and how this whole thing has come together, and I can say it, hundreds and hundreds of people that this partnership that we've got along with Pace O Matic and otherwise, I have to believe that he is tickled about what's going on here.
I mean, I can go deeper in that. I mean, I know some of those private conversations about the Dale Juniors and the Kellys and the Carries and stuff, and just seeing. And I'll say this, and I haven't told him, but I mean, we haven't talked much, but I know his thoughts about Kelly and Carrie and Dale Jr. and I can tell you that they have matured so much even since 2001. I can see what Dale was hoping would happen and some of the things that we talked about come to fruition. So there's no way he wouldn't be smiling and being proud of the heritage, and what people in the sport really try to do, which is build it up.
And the Earnhardt name is stronger than ever with all of his children. And quite frankly, I find comfort after my dad died a month after I graduated from college at the age of 21 that he walks with the angels now, and you will see him again. We all shall. And I bet he's racing on the best, most glorious racetrack we've ever seen and coming in first.
Well, I guarantee you he ain't spinning out David Pearson and a few of those others, because Neil would rack him up too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's his buddies, right?
What a time. What a time they're having up there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This has been great, Chris. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing everybody Saturday this week down in Florence, South Carolina at the kickoff race of the Smart Modified Tour. Sadler Stanley Racing, proud to be a part of the series. Bill, take us home.
Yes.
I'm Senator Bill Stanley. In this very monumental podcast, I'm Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
I'm Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left. We'll see everybody at Florence Motor Speedway this weekend for the Smart Modified Tour, and back next week for more leaning right and turning left with Sadler and the Senator.
God bless you all.